So before you remortgage your house to, get one of these therapies, I'd maybe hang on a little bit.
The question is really around, can lights cure us? And I think that this question has come off the back of some pretty creepy looking masks that you can buy for a lot of money. So there's like face masks that you can, like sheet masks you can put on your skin. This is different. This is like I guess they're plastic.
Yeah, I think they've got LED lights inside them, haven't they?
They look so creepy. And then they sort of emit this, I think they're often like a reddish glow, and they're meant to sort of rejuvenate your skin. Once more, we're talking about things that are marketed heavily to women in their 30s and 40s. And then beyond that, there's all sorts of other claims around different colours of light, different light therapies. So we're just going to do it all in one hit today. The colours of the rainbow, the spectrum, the visible and slightly invisible light spectrum. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about mobile phone radiation, and I incorrectly placed...
Okay, so can you do year 4 physics here? And where on the electromagnetic spectrum coloured light sits?
It's just a really wiggly line, and the wiggles get littler in some parts and bigger in others. I promise I actually studied physics all the way through to senior in school, but the visible light spectrum sits kind of, we selfishly put it in the middle of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Well, it is in the middle in terms of wavelength.
Yeah, and so we have on... on the
I can feel
bear with me. On the little wiggle section, we've got ultraviolet light, and then it moves into visible violet light through to red light, and then infrared on the other end as the wavelengths get longer.
And we only see a tiny part of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah, and so that comes to us in the form of white light, which anyone who's played with a little piece of glass or a crystal near a window knows that it can be split into the rainbow as we know it, red through to violet.
And they are divided up by their wavelength too. So within the visible spectrum, the different colours have different wavelengths. Hence the discussion about different coloured lights and the effects in the body.
So I think what would be useful today and kind of fun is to move through the rainbow, because there are different health claims that are around different colours of the visible light spectrum. And given that we did start talking about those creepy face masks, I think we start with infrared and the red end of the spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, infrared radiation is perceived by our bodies as heat. It warms up it gets the molecules moving faster, and you feel that as heat.
Yeah, and that's how infrared saunas work. So a traditional sauna, and we did talk about saunas a couple of weeks ago on WhatsApp Rash, so go back and listen to that. I actually did a traditional sauna, and it was really, really hot. Who knew? Anyway, but infrared sauna doesn't use steam to create the heat. It uses the light, and they're sort of dry, and it just makes you feel really hot. There's also a part of the spectrum called near infrared that's used in cancer treatment.
Yeah, it's experimental at the moment, but you get a chemical that's activated by near-infrared light. You attach an antibody to it, and that antibody is specific to the tumour you're trying to attack. But it's relatively inactive until it's exposed to near-infrared light. So you inject the drug into the body, you then expose the person to near-infrared light, it gets activated, goes to the tumour, and helps to destroy the tumour.
Oh, that is so cool.
It is
cool. And that's not widely used at the moment.
It's still experimental. Some people believe that some tumours are more susceptible to the others, but it's also a good way to treat tumours that are relatively inaccessible either to surgery or to other forms of chemotherapy, because sometimes chemotherapy is quite hard to penetrate a tumour, and this is a way to try and add to that.
That is awesome. We might have to come back to that in more detail one day. But to move through the rainbow a little bit more, I hear a lot about LED therapy, so like light-emitting diodes. You can make them be different colours, and there has been some research. There's also been a lot of claims around different colours of light doing different things, and one of the studies that caught my eye was, it was an observation from NASA scientists working in space where they were growing potato plants up in space in zero gravity, and to help the potato plants to grow, they exposed the plants to red and blue light, because that's part of the spectrum of light that doesn't get reflected by the leaves. That's why leaves look green to us, is because they're reflecting the green light. And so the scientists were working with their hands on these potato plants, and they seemed to notice that any cuts on their hands healed faster when they were under the light. And so now there's sort of claims around red and blue light being healing to your skin.
Yes, that's right. And that's where the mask comes in. So there's a belief that red light gets under the skin and stimulates fibroblasts. Now, to understand fibroblasts better, I refer people back to our collagen episode of What's
Our
That
back
Rash?
catalogue is rich. It's rich, a
It
seam
is
to
rich
mine.
and networked like connective tissue in the body.
Much like collagen fibers, exactly.
So fibroblasts produce collagen, and the idea here is, which comes from the wound healing, is that the red light stimulates fibroblasts to do their job, and therefore, if you wear a mask with red light, then it's like plumping up the skin with collagen. The evidence is thin for that. Theoretically, it could work, but there have been very few randomized trials. So before you remortgage your house to get one of these therapies, I'd maybe hang on a little bit and refer to our collagen episode to see what might be cheaper ways to stimulate your collagen production. Now,
But Norman, NASA.
I know,
NASA.
I know, but
The halo effect is so strong. Moving through the rainbow.
something happens in a spaceship has to be true.
Exactly. So, okay, we're moving through the rainbow. We've talked about red. It's yellow time now. There's claims around yellow light being good for something that when I'm reading it out, I know it's not arrhythmia.
No,
And I know it's got something to do with your
erythema,
skin. Erythema.
which is
skin
inflammation
redness.
and skin redness.
Skin
That's
redness.
right.
Okay,
So it's
right.
supposed to be good for that, which again is about its effect on the immune system or a direct effect on the skin.
But like that's just a cosmetic thing, right? Like is erythema bad for you in any other way, or is it a symptom of something that could be bad for you?
Well, it's a symptom of burning. So when you get sunburn, that's erythema. Radiation damage causes erythema. And some underlying inflammatory processes in the body come out as redness in the skin. So yeah, it's more a reflection of either burning, excessive radiation from other sources, or a reflection of other illnesses, but mostly through burning.
Right. So maybe it's treating a symptom of something else
Could
that might
just
be
be
going on.
calming it all down, if indeed it works at all.
Okay. Next
What's
color. Next color is green. The claims around green light seem to be about port wine stains specifically. Those really kind of quite striking birthmarks that some people have.
Yeah, and this tends to be higher energy light. So lasers produce colored light, and lasers are heavily used in medicine, and different colored lasers have different levels of energy. And also they interact actually with the colors of blood, and blood vessels and so on. So port wine stains are dense red stain on the skin. And the interaction here is, it's similar to using lasers to get rid of tattoos. Is you use certain colored lasers to interact with the color of the tattoo, and you neutralize the color. That's thought to be one of the ways it works on port wine stains. But also colored lasers are used in surgery. For example, there's a green laser that's used in urological surgery for enlarged prostates, which is it's quite high powered, which is partly related to the color, and carves out the prostate, and some would argue much better than a knife. So the surgeon could do the operation faster with less blood loss. So we're not going to talk a lot about lasers today, but lasers do employ this idea that colors are different, penetrate differently in your skin, and have different energy levels.
So we're moving through the rainbow. We've done red, yellow, green, and now we're at blue. Blue light for acne.
It's one of the main focal points, and there's been a lot of work done on blue for acne. So blue light for acne, one is that it might sterilize the skin because acne lesions are often infected with a particular bug, and that bug, in theory, could be knocked off by blue light. It may settle down the inflammation of acne. When you look at the sum total of the evidence in this area, you could say that on balance, it does have an effect on acne, but it's a small effect. So the effect size is small, and the effect size of existing therapies is larger. So if you wanted to add to it, maybe, but not by itself.
And purple light and acne as well. Is it the same sort of story in terms of the evidence?
Yeah, and they've also tried ultraviolet light for acne. In other words, effectively exposing yourself to the sun.
So this was the question I was going to ask, is if a lot of the claims around different coloured light and skin health and looking good and killing germs and that sort of thing. It sort of seems like the whole spectrum can be doing something. Should people just be going outside? Like, the combination of all these colours of light is white light.
And white light does have definite therapeutic effects.
Okay.
And so white light is a bit different. If you're getting white light from an LED or a light source, here I am in a television studio, so I'm getting white light. Now, that's different from sunlight, because sunlight's got ultraviolet light in it, UVA, UVB, and that's not on the visible spectrum.
Sure.
And you're not getting much from just a standard light that I'm sitting here. But white light in its own, on its own, without UVA and UVB, can have a therapeutic effect. So one therapeutic effect is treatment of depression or seasonal affective disorder.
Okay. Well, so we're moving out of cosmetic treatments to something that's very much psychological. Talk me through what the reasoning is behind why light would be useful for something like depression.
Well, let's start with seasonal affective disorder. So seasonal affective disorder usually comes on in people who are susceptible to it in winter. It's supposedly worse the further away you get from the equator, but people do get seasonal affective disorder in Australia. It's usually in winter. Some people can get it in other seasons as well. And what light therapy does there is readjusts the circadian rhythm, and in a sense extends the day. And it's usually exposure to bright white light in the morning. And this can be through a light box, which comes on and simulates the dawn. There's different ways of doing this. And some people use it, sometimes it's used to prevent seasonal affective disorder, which is essentially depression and low mood. And some people have tried using it for depression. And some people have tried it to improve insomnia, because sometimes insomnia is a problem of shifted phase where you can't get to sleep during the normal hours that people sleep, and exposure to bright light resets your melatonin and your body clock.
Refer back to our melatonin episode.
Exactly. And there is some evidence that bright white light can help seasonal affective disorder. The problem with the research in this area is that it's all over the shop and not been terribly well done. But if you sum up all the research, there's probably a small effect to prevent seasonal affective disorder, and it's controversial whether it helps depression at all. If it does help depression, it's in association with other antidepressant treatments, such as drugs or psychotherapy.
But on the flip side, unlike a lot of other treatments, it's free, or a light box, and there's probably not as many side effects as you might get with a drug.
Yeah. However, for depression itself, the evidence seems to be that it enhances existing therapies rather than being a terribly effective therapy by itself. And of course, we've talked a lot on our sister podcast, The Health Report, about exercise and depression. Now, there's pretty good evidence that fairly vigorous exercise does have an antidepressant effect. Now, the question is, how much of that is being out in the sun and light as much as the exercise itself? And there's probably a couple of things going on, as there always is.
Exactly. So we did talk about infrared before we started talking about the visible light spectrum. So it feels only fair that we should also talk about ultraviolet, which is the other side, invisible.
That's right. And higher energy. And therefore, it's got the potential to burn.
Yeah, so this is the thing that I wanted to ask about, because there are health claims around using UV light, and I think most of the health messages that we receive about UV light are avoid it, it'll give you skin cancer. So how do you use it for benefit without increasing your risk of skin cancer?
That is a key question. Let me describe how it's mostly used. It's mostly used for the treatment of psoriasis. So psoriasis can be a very difficult, it's an autoimmune skin condition. There are drugs which can treat it, but they're very expensive, and they're down the line a bit. So certain ointments are used to treat psoriasis, but also sunlight. It's been long observed that people with psoriasis get a lot better in summer. So using ultraviolet light. So they sit you under an ultraviolet lamp, and they'll often give you one of these drugs that I was mentioning earlier, which are activated by ultraviolet light. And in that case, it was infrared, but there's also a drug that can be activated. It's called Psoralen. And they give you Psoralen, and it enhances the effect of ultraviolet light on your skin because it's activated by the light. It's called PUVA, is the treatment. Now, the limitation in PUVA is the risk of skin cancer goes up with PUVA. It's one of the complications of ultraviolet light in psoriasis. So there's a limit to how much you can have it. So it requires, it's a fine balance there between people who be getting the benefits of PUVA, which people often like because you get a bit of a suntan skin, but you're also getting a bit of sun damage as well. And it's fine balance. This is where these new monoclonal antibody drugs can help, but they have their own side effects and are horribly expensive.
And so what I'd be interested to know about this whole spectrum, as we've been just speaking about, is that we encourage people to wear sunscreen every day because it helps protect you against skin cancer. If you're wearing sunscreen, are you stopping the other parts of light or just the UV part?
It's mainly the UV part.
Okay.
And people often say then, well, what about vitamin D?
Well, we have an episode on vitamin D, which again, the recommendations for other What's That rashes are coming through thick and fast today.
So if you were absolutely religious and slapped your whole body and redid it every 2 hours, and that's what you did, and you never got exposed to sunlight, you might have a problem with vitamin D. The reality is, none of us do it perfectly, and the experts in this area say do it as well as you can, but because you do it a bit imperfectly, you are getting vitamin D from the sun. And before we leave today's episode, there is one other really important use of light as therapy, and that's in newborn babies.
For jaundice, of course.
That's right. So one of the problems of neonates is that they gather bilirubin in the skin.
Bilirubin. It's a good name, I reckon. I'm going to write a book. That's going to be the main character.
Yeah, Billy.
Bilirubin, yeah.
Yeah, or Reuben, his brother.
Yeah. Bilirubin, our mate, is basically a byproduct of red blood cells breaking down, and your body hasn't been able to clear them, and so it shows up as yellowness in the skin and the whites of the eyes.
That's right. And the problem in neonates is that if it accumulates in the brain, it can cause a brain damage called kernicterus, which is a really nasty brain condition. So you want to keep the bilirubin levels down. And the revolution in the care of the newborn baby with high levels of bilirubin is light therapy, because when you shine light from specially designed lamps, but it can also be sunlight, you put the baby out in the sun, it breaks down the bilirubin in the skin.
And they also look like they're having a little suntan, like they're in their little crib.
Right.
They've got the little patch over their eyes. They're kind of a bit yellow, so they look a little bit tanned. And they're just chilling out.
Yeah, it can be very cute, but with a nasty undertone. So unfortunately, their heels get pricked a lot to find out what their bilirubin level is. But what it does is it turns the bilirubin from being stuck in the skin to being able to be flushed out in the kidneys, and has saved a lot of kids from brain damage.
Do adults need light therapy if they have jaundice? If they have like a liver function problem or something like that?
It's not, you've got to get to the cause of the jaundice in adults. So in neonates, there are only really 2 causes, but in adults, there are many causes of a high bilirubin level. And you don't want to get it down just for the sake of it. You want to, if there's a blockage in the liver or the pancreas, or you've got hepatitis, you want to be able to deal with that.
Why do you say neonates when I know that you could say wee bairns?
Wee babies.
Wee babies. So have we answered the question here? The question in a sentence is, can lights cure us? I kind of feel like maybe a little bit, yeah.
That's right. But not necessarily magically with huge effects.
Fair enough.
Choose your colour carefully.
Choose your colour carefully. Well, thank you so much to everyone who sends in questions to us. You can send your questions in to thatrash@abc.net.au.
And for all the physicists in the audience, I encourage you to ask difficult questions about the electromagnetic spectrum, which we'll get Tegan to answer.
Please no more questions about the electromagnetic spectrum. Now, thatrash@abc.net.au is where I do refer you to send your feedback also. But today, Norman, I am going to bring you feedback from our YouTube audience, because of course we have been on YouTube these past couple of weeks, and the comment section wasn't as awful as I expected it to be. Which is quite unusual for a YouTube audience. No shade to those who did comment. We have a comment from someone called RVMM1. I'm guessing
At
that's what
RVMM1.
at RVMM1, saying, "This is the first video I watched from your channel because I was recommended it. I love it. Clear, concise explanations and intelligent questions." So that's nice. Go us. But then they were also asking...
How do we know he or she's not just an AI invention?
I wrote this. No, I didn't. So anyway, this was on our episode on collagen supplements, and you and I were having a chat about the fact that exercise is good for collagen production, and I wondered whether it maybe offset the other aging, whether it could come through in the face. Anyway, our commenter says, "My 70-year-old mother was a PE teacher and has been physically active and strong and lean pretty much every day of her life. She's also been an avid sun lover." And basically, our commenter says that even though she's very, very fit and healthy, she does have quite deep lines on her face. So it seems the sun exposure did more harm to her face than her physical exercise did good.
So slap on the sunblock and put on a hat and then go out for a run.
That's it.
And
then,
keep smiling so you're stretching your face.
Yeah, exactly. And then our other commenter is called Jane Austen Ate My Cat, who says, "Absolutely fascinating. Thank you. I bought some collagen tablets," she writes, "but I'm not convinced it's doing anything. After watching this video, I'm not going to buy any more, but I will finish the bottle. More yoga for me."
Good thinking. Well, clearly what you need to do is spend the money on a new cat. Damn that Jane Austen.
See, it has been fun being on YouTube, Norman. All these new commenters, hopefully new people listening to the show. I don't know if they realise that they can listen to the show on the ABC Listen app.
Yeah, you go to the ABC Listen app and download or subscribe to What's That Rash?